Well, good morning, CHD. Guess what? You are going to learn a lot today. I am so excited for this guest and for his partner in crime that I actually booked two back to back episodes for them. And his partner in crime, you know him as Dr. Christian Bogner. I know him as I've never seen him and Superman in the same place at the same time. But we have working with Dr. Bogner, Alex Zaharakis. Alex, welcome to the show, and thank you so much for your work is so vital. I love what you're doing. I love checking in with you, and it's high time that I had you and Christian on the show. When we got talking about this, I thought, you know what, it's just too much for 30 minutes, so we'll split you guys up. I hope that was okay with you.
Perfect. Yeah. So excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, tell me more about Autism is Biomedical. It's the organization that I believe that you founded with Dr. Bogner. Um, Tell me more about that and what what your aims are in starting this organization.
Yeah. So Christian and I, Dr. Bogner, started this about a year ago, and it was something that we kind of toyed around with for a couple of years. And I think one of the main reasons is that we were offering and countering a lot of opposition to the idea that um, there are things that you can do to support people with autism on the medical side, comorbidities that exist, and that if you support those, appropriately and adequately, you can see significant improvements in quality of life. And this could be in the areas of, speech, motor coordination, apparent cognition, kind of focus, attention, you name it. And there's for some reason has historically been a lot of taboo around trying to uh, isolate some of the medical issues in autism and support them. For some reason, it's viewed as something that you shouldn't do. So we strongly believe that's there's no room for that. There's nothing wrong with helping children, adults improve quality of life, and they should really know about some of these comorbidities that they could support, and some of the different tools that exist out there. So we have a lot of different goals, but one of them is education. Another one is we'd like to be able to support parents that maybe financially can't get into doing some of these tests that might help them out eventually, and basically just kind of be a beacon for knowledge in this biomedical area, so that people can improve quality of life safely, practically, affordably, and really get that education piece out there that autism is biomedical.
I couldn't agree more. And I appreciate the fact that you're really spreading the word and you're countering, so much of the narrative, regarding, high functioning autism, neurodiversity, whatever, that, these kids, and my son is on the severe side of the spectrum, definitely. These kids are in biomedical distress, and there are things that can be done and should be done in order to be able to help them, in order to be able to help them to learn, to be able to function, to be able to speak, whatever. Your background is pretty varied. When we've talked before, we've talked about the microbial world, healing the gut, what you call gut balancing. I mean, we were just talking before the show, and you were like, "Oh, well, I just put together this circuit." Mike, you must have quite a background that you're able to do, all these different things.
Well, I'm just using the tools that I have. I'm a radiation oncology physicist. My primary discipline was physics. I taught physics, college physics for several years, electrical engineering, and then I got into medical physics kind of secondhand, and I've been doing that for probably about a decade or more now. And I'm trying to leverage all of the skills that I have. Whether it be the electrical engineering side for these photobiomodulation devices, or my programming background and analytical background to kind of help with the analytics of sequencing in the gut, and just
Right.
try to make sense of this, make it find solutions, and then bring that to the table, that so we can kind of expand on it.
Well, in the world of autism being biomedical, one of the first things that you hear is heal the gut. I mean, and you hear it over and over and over again. And depending on who you talk to, then it just could be, could be something as facile and maybe non-scientific as like throwing a bunch of supplements down your neck and then saying, whatever, this magic soup will work. But I think, based on you, based on your background, based on what I've heard, gut balancing really is a scientific approach, that you're looking at the science of the gut, and it sounds like you're achieving some really remarkable outcomes. So break down gut balancing for us.
For me, if it doesn't make sense, I have a hard time. Like I have to be able to kind of explain it, and certainly it's a very complex topic, autism
Right,
in
right.
general. But it essentially grew out of you can go out there and do some of these tests, and they'll tell you what's right and what's wrong. And having looked at some of the more underlying pieces in the test, looking at the raw data, I found that a lot of the the purported dysfunction on some of these tests were missing the boat. So I developed some analysis to kind of look at the entirety of the microbiome, and I leveraged some data from the American Gut Project, which is a collection of a lot of samples over years. And I try to, I first tried to kind of categorize what the issues were. There's a lot of theories out there, but I ended up landing on a simple approach. It was a combination of several things, and one of them, I tried to kind of leverage what the value in the median population is for the microbes that exist in the gut. And the theory is that, I try to use these analogies, like if you're a new kid in the lunchroom on the first day and you don't want to look weird, just do what the guy in the middle of the room is doing. And what happens in the gut is, rather than get into the argument of what's the best microbiome, it really is that the microbiomes are just so dysfunctional. Let's just try to get closer to the microbiome in the median value of the population. And if we do that, chances are we're going to see improvements. It's going to be significantly less dysfunctional. And that might be enough to give us enough healing to then, move on to other components. And so that's kind of the approach. And what I wanted to do was marry it with two things. Expert practitioner, kind of historical suggestions. Hey, we know these things have worked. Let's try to kind of pick from them. And then simultaneously, I wanted to be able to use compounds that were positive. So, historically, each society in the world, whether it be, the areas of the Mediterranean or kind of the, Arabic area or Indian descent, they have herbs and compounds that they've been using for thousands of years for ailments. And, to us, it might be hocus pocus, but, if you had a GI issue, 2000 years ago in Greece, they gave you two things. They gave you mastic gum and they gave you chamomile tea. And if you look at the literature on it, they're very, very helpful. So what I tried to do was to try to find some of these very positive compounds, find what the relationships are, what do they affect in the gut, and then combining all of this stuff, determine which of these compounds, which are positive, would be appropriate for the particular individual. Sometimes it's an herb, a plant, it's a prebiotic, sometimes it's a specific probiotic strain, and really trying to, say, okay, here, these 10 things are the most appropriate for you. They're also well studied. We have practitioner information on them. Let's give it a shot. Let's see what happens. And then, retest and evaluate the individual and take it from there. So it's been an evolution of starting with that, learning relationships. There's been new learned relationships over time for specific overgrowths. It's quite exciting to see something work and, something change positively.
Right.
So that's really, feasible, practical, hands on the ground kind of get it done.
It sounds like you do some baseline testing. So you establish the baseline microbiome for that particular patient. And then you've got, the tools of the trade, the things that you've been studying, different herbs, different medicines, even delivering, the organisms themselves, it sounds like. And then you go back, retest, and then see what the difference is. When you're working with patients, do you often have to go back and retest multiple times, as the microbiome evolves? How would that look over a period of, say months to a year if you're working with a particular patient?
Yeah, so typically we suggest that they retest at about 6 weeks. The intervention's about 6 weeks, and then there's kind of a
Mhm.
4 week carryover where there's a very light set of suggestions until we get the new results. And there's kind of two endpoints that we're looking at. One of them is the clinical measure of improvement, and that's kind of, we have an idea of some things that might benefit based on some of the compounds that we're using, but it really is individualized. Someone can say, hey, they got better in this, and this, and for someone else, it could be, 5 other different things. So there's that clinical improvement, and then there's the improvement on the test. And in some sense, it is a challenge because you're always looking in the past. It takes about 3 weeks
Right.
to get the results. Microbiome is very sensitive, particularly it seems to have a kind of an unstable type of behavior in these kids. And so it's very susceptible to things in the environment, changes like that. But we can see the changes that we make. So it's like kind of projecting forward. I want to throw this ball. I throw it across the yard, and I went too far. So now I kind of wind up on the next test, and I throw it a little bit more shallower. So there's sometimes we overshoot in certain areas, and sometimes we don't quite make enough progress in some areas, depending on the prebiotics that may be needed for those
Mhm.
particular genuses. And then we kind of adapt and move forward from there. So typically, I'd say people do about 3 rounds of these 6 week periods at the
Right.
minimum, testing every 6 weeks. But everyone essentially, 99% of the people see improvement in the first round.
Right.
So
And these are just GI panel tests. So you get a stool sample. It's genetic markers. So are you like at the genus level, or?
So yeah, there is the ability to resolve down to the species level.
Mhm.
Sometimes you're stuck at the genus level. Most of the compound interventions that we understand really kind of exist more at the genus level. Having a higher resolution sometimes doesn't really help you out there
Right.
because you say, well, I don't even know whether this would be good or bad for this. Um, but yeah, so it's a microbial. We sequence the microbiome. 16S is this gene on the
Right.
ribosomal RNA, and there's a database. It's the most complete database that exists. Now, there's a lot of criticism out there that say, well, there's newer technology like shotgun metagenomics. The problem there is that those databases are significantly less complete. So
Right.
it's kind of like handing you a very fine dictionary with very intricate words, but I've only given you half of the dictionary.
Okay.
Um, so there, that's the kind of pro and the con. And I like to use the 16S test because that's where most of the literature is based off of. It's much more affordable. It's a much more simple way to recombine and denoise the sequences.
Right.
Over time, if you fast forward the clock in 10 years, I think that the shotgun metagenomes will overtake that without doubt.
Well, it makes sense though what you're saying. I mean, if you've got a complete library of 16S sequences, and an incomplete library of what you get from shotgun metagenomics, you want the full library. You want to be able to do these identifications. Is there any? I mean, I know that, as the saying goes, if you've met one autistic child, you've met one. You haven't met them all. But are there any particular generalities that you see when you're looking and diagnosing, gut dysbiosis and the microbiome with autism. I mean, I've heard things like lack of diversity or specific pathogens, anaerobic pathogens like Clostridia pop up. Is it generalized, or is it much more individual specific?
I think that it's a combination of both. So there's certainly features that are very common. One of the features that's very common, they usually have little or no bifidobacterium.
Right.
Beyond that, you can get yourself into, different classifications. There are children that have very high gram-negative Bacteroides. There's children that have none. There's some that have very insane levels of Prevotella overgrowth. So, I mean, it's
Mhm.
just remarkable, taking up three-quarters of the sample, and then some that have none. You have individuals that have no Faecalibacterium prausnitzii or have it very elevated. So it really is dysfunction. As you can imagine it, like how many different ways could you imagine? If you were going to buy a home, landing
Right.
on a bad home. It's like either it doesn't have a front door, or there's only, the toilet is in the kitchen, or it's just weird things that you would never imagine, but you see that in the microbiome of these kids.
Obviously, you're doing this. So this is a trial. You do 3 rounds, 6 weeks in between samples. What type of outcomes are you seeing? I mean, I know everybody is, you hear that miracle story and you think that, your kid's going to be the Ron Kaufman of the world and completely, come out of autism or whatever. But, what are some of the outcomes that you're seeing?
Yeah, so we work with either these young kids, the old kids,
Right.
severe to mild, and I particularly like seeing more dysfunction on the test, because to me that says that there's more things to improve upon. For some kids, they regain speech. For some kids, it's I get messages every day. It's there's attention, there's focus. He's doing this, she's doing this. He's interacting. His motor coordination is improving, drawing his name.
Right.
For other kids, it could be much more subtle things like playing with peers, or just being able to sit and attend. I would say when the individual is more severe, they're typically is more upside. They're
Right.
it's kind of it's certainly more noticeable, the improvements. As you get less severe and more mild, um, sometimes that some of those improvements are actually hard to decipher. For instance, you might have a child that doesn't necessarily do exploratory or how can I say, naughty things. Like, for instance, in my
Right.
son, one of the things that I noticed as we started to work on his gut is he started to get more mischievous.
Mm.
He would go look around the house for all of the cookies and candies, and all the drawers would be all open, and he'd find things and open locks, and these are things that he never done before. Now you can construe that that's a non-ideal thing. You can construe, kind of talking back, or maybe being argumentative in a more mild case as being non-ideal, but it actually might be more neurotypical, more
Right.
appropriate. So it's a gray area there and I always try to approach that cautiously, saying, with those, less severe kids, telling the parents that, it's not unreasonable to see these things, and they do notice other improvements too.
It's so encouraging. And, having a neurotypical problem is a great problem to have. I mean, regardless if it's mischief or back talking or whatever, as compared to seeing your child in pain, you would take it any day. Getting into gut balancing, into some of these other therapy modalities that you and Dr. Bogner have worked on, where's the best place for people to get information, just to, to kind of, to be able to enlist you, to be able to enlist Dr. Bogner in the work? And I'm imagining that you're consulting online, correct?
Yeah, so the people that I work with, it's free of charge. I don't charge anything. I have literally an inbox full of people, so my load has been quite very high for some time. They can reach out to our charity, Autism is Biomedical, and through the contact email there, contact
Hmm.
at autismisbiomedical.com. We'll work with them and get them set up. Dr. Bogner, he's a physician, and he does more of an in-depth overview, and he'll look at other
Right.
things that I don't. I'm not a physician. He'll look at blood panels and other types of testing, which are very appropriate and helpful. So we work well together. We share a mutual lot of patients. In the future, it looks like we'll have some really nice supports that I might be able to do this full time and really expand the help for the community. So that's exciting there. But I never turn anyone away. We have people that are non-autistic that work with us as well and see GI problems, because there's information to learn everywhere. And it's not only the gut. We focus on the nutraceutical side as well. There's our specific symptoms that we marry with the gut dysfunction that we can help
Right.
out, usually even before getting the test done. So yeah, we're just looking for improvement. And if you reach out to us, we'll get you squared away. It might be a little bit time, but if you wait patiently, we'll get to you.
Well, I so appreciate it, and there's something else I want to explore with you, and this came up fairly early on with my interactions with you and Christian, was with the sodium thiosulfate, and maybe you can break down what sodium thiosulfate is and how you've been using it. There seemed also to be a connection with cyanide.
Yeah.
Is that still on the table? Is that still something that you guys are looking at? I apologize for bringing up that wrinkle.
Yeah.
If that's something that you're like, okay, Brian, pass or whatever, that's absolutely fine. But I found that really, really intriguing.
Yeah. So, it's a molecule of sodium thiosulfate. It's a sulfur salt, largely kind of unused in the last century. It was FDA approved for cyanide poisoning back in the 30s, and then kind of tucked away. And
Right.
and that was really for fear of use of cyanide poisoning in the war. And we stumbled upon this molecule with the help of actually an autistic boy named Jacob. Christian and I were actually looking at things like mycotoxins at the time, and we were really trying to kind of, for instance, there's a particular toxin called Don toxin that doesn't really show up on many of the tests, and we were looking for some therapeutics that might be able to help with this toxin. And we kind of came across sodium thiosulfate, which has been used in agriculture actually for mycotoxins. And
Hmm.
upon administering this compound, we saw some benefits in a lot of children. My son particularly started to gain words, and we tried to discover the mechanism. So sodium thiosulfate is very helpful in recycling glutathione. It turns out
Right.
there's a big difference between taking glutathione and recycling glutathione. And you can take glutathione, it's like me giving you a piece of candy, and when you eat that candy, you're left with the wrapper. And eventually, at some point, you might have a room full of wrappers, and that's
Mhm.
oxidized glutathione. Your body doesn't have a good way of getting rid of it. There's some processes. One of the processes in this rhodonase enzyme, it utilizes sodium thiosulfate. So we theorize that many of these kids, under high oxidative stress, may be coming with a huge bucket of oxidized glutathione that can't go anywhere. So the sodium thiosulfate kind of takes that off the table. Why that's really important is because large pools of oxidized glutathione actually inhibit the methylation cycle, which is
Right.
like the whole wheel that moves everything. So we were theorizing, hey, this is a main reason why this is helping out. But we actually found two other potential reasons that may be helping out. One of them is that, as you know, it's been used for cyanide poisoning. Doing some kind of indirect testing with many of these kids, found elevated levels of cyanide in them. And that might just be because they're poor at detoxification, and they just kind of accrue this over time.
Right.
There's some evidence that some of the microbes in your gut can actually generate over time,
Sure.
cyanide. So that's one thing. Another layer that it might be peeling off, and another layer is that it actually converts your serum B12, your cyanocobalamin, into hydroxycobalamin, and that's your kind of non-active B12 to your active B12. Which in autism, it's been found that many of the children have high levels of B12 in the blood, but they do quite well on some of these active B12. So
Right.
it may be that a chronic cyanide component is also inhibiting this B12 component. The last thing that was just super interesting is that we discovered a disease in Africa called Konzo disease, Konzo. And what's so interesting about it is you look at the manifestations of this disease, it's very similar, striking features to autism. Um,
Hmm.
Toe walking, motor functions issues, loss of gait, loss of ability to speak. And the onset of this comes from in areas of Africa, they eat heavily in their diet this cassava plant, which is very full of cyanide. So this disease is a manifestation of having, chronic cyanide poisoning. Now, not enough to kill you, but enough to kind of knock you down. So it was just really striking those similarities there. And I think we have to do more research and kind of pin these things down. But we've seen a lot of positive improvements. It's a tool. We have it as a lotion, and it's something that just takes off a couple of layers. So we marry it with gut balancing, we marry it with some other support components, and we have this arsenal of tools that we can kind of bring improvement in quality of life.
What you're doing in terms of improving the lives of these children and adults is, based on science. It's one of the most scientific approaches that I've seen. And in sort of, and I hate to call it an industry of, a bunch of people that have one-trick ponies. I mean, this is super refreshing. I so appreciate that. Like you said, the sodium thiosulfate is a lotion. So you just you apply it topically, once a day, twice a day, or
Yeah, because it's going to help out with this buildup of oxidized glutathione.
right,
People tend to see this this bigger improvement up front, and then over time you don't need to be applying it every day, but you can start with every other day.
right,
You can go to daily, and then I'd say after you kind of finish one bottle, that you probably can get away with just applying it once a week. Granted that you're working on other parts of the system, your body system, to make sure that you're kind of dealing with toxicity in general. But yeah, it's like, and if you did nothing and you stopped taking it, and for 3 months later you started to accrue more oxidized glutathione, well, if you apply it again, then you see kind of a little jump again of improvement. So that's where it's you can't infinitely take it to help you out. It's going to help you out when your body is detoxifying, essentially, when you build up all those wrappers that need to be recycled.
I love the way they put that. It makes so much sense. Glutathione is not just glutathione. It's either oxidized glutathione, which really does your body no good, and then reduced glutathione, which is the active state. You're an autism dad, and I love the power of dad. And you're such an example of the power of dad. You're somebody that decided that you wanted to heal your own son, and then you also are reaching out to the community of so many individuals that have so many things that can be improved biomedically, that have autism. How, if I can ask, how is your son doing?
He's doing great. I mean, he's had so many improvements over the last couple of years. It's just remarkable. I mean, there's times when, I kind of think back, or I look to some older emails. Like the other day, I had to go through my emails and send some information to someone that I'm working with for some historical references, and just to see the improvements that he's made. So he has some words. But in
Hmm.
terms of his cognition and his play and his interaction, the things that he can do, he's so more self-independent. It's just been kind of a game changer. And in a lot of things that parents will say is that as the child gets improved, there's certain challenges that come with that too. I mean, it used to be that years ago, I kind of, I don't want to say didn't have to pay attention to him as much, but he was more predictable, and now it's like he's his own person, and
Right.
there's things, you can take him to the toy store, he picks out a toy. That was a huge thing, is being interested in toys or stuff like that, or wanting something, or knowing when he wants something, or wanting to play and do something. So it's these little small things that I think improve quality of life for the family. And there's no reason why that my child should improve, and someone else across the street that has an autistic child that doesn't know the things that I know. Why it's not fair in my mind why they should be separated from that. This should be ubiquitous information that physicians understand and know and want to share. And that's kind of the thing that drives me, is that I want to make this known. I want to help out other kids. I want to make it better. I think if we put our minds together, we can really connect the dots on these things. And that's really been the success. Every time something works, it's because a parent says, hey, we tried this here, and we've seen amazing gains, and we research it, or it's something with the gut, and we expand upon that. We try that on other people safely, and then that's how we get to where we are today.
Well, we are so privileged to be able to have time with you. I mean, not only I'm sure your household is very, very busy. You're an autism dad. You are CEO of Autism is Biomedical, CSO of Research Elements, and you have a day job, right? So thank you so much for taking time out. Thank you for being an example. The website again is just autismisbiomedical.com.
Correct. Autismisbiomedical.com and researchelements.com. And they can find the contact information there. Email us if you have any questions. We'd be happy to reach out, call you on the phone, typically calling parents all the time just to kind of, touch base.
Excellent. Well, thanks again, Alex. It's a privilege and a pleasure to have you join us today. And thank you, everybody, for joining us for this important episode of Doctors and Scientists.
Hi, Polly.
Hello.
It's so nice to meet you.
It's nice to see so much of everything doing. So tell me your name.
Dawn Winkler.
Hi, Dawn. And what's your story?
Well, my daughter, Haley Lynn, she would be 21 if she were still here. And that's what got me involved in the vaccine issue. So
All right, let's
basically
go right back
to the
It's kind
beginning.
of a heavy
Absolutely,
starter.
yeah. So she was born completely healthy, normal, beautiful, light of my life, light of my family's life, bonded our family together like nothing ever had before. And she did receive hepatitis B vaccine and vitamin K on day 1 of life, and became severely jaundiced, just severe, which I was told is totally normal. Don't worry about it. I bought that story and was like, okay. The jaundice almost went away by 1 month, and then it was time for the 1 month Hep B. I knew nothing, of course, at this time. This is 21 years ago. So she got a Hep B, and immediately the next day, severe jaundice again. And once again, I was told it's normal, this can happen. Sometimes they're not just jaundiced after birth, it can happen again. Okay. She was they put her under the light, bilirubin light, all that. Then the jaundice was almost gone again. And at 2 months, it was time for more shots, another Hep B, and then all of them, the DTaP, the IPV, the HIB, all of it. So I took her, she got them, and literally overnight after the 2 month, she had eczema. She had not had up until that point. I was told it's normal, don't worry about it, and she became jaundiced again. So this is the 3rd time now that she's severely jaundiced, requiring the bilirubin light. It seemed to get a little better over the next 2 months, and then it was time for her 4-month shots. And this time, I had a really sick feeling in the pit of my stomach, and I won't ever forget the day walking out of my mother's kitchen to take her. was about to leave, and I turned to my mother and I just said, Mom, I just don't want to do this. I don't know why. It just doesn't seem right. And she said, yeah, I know. I felt that way sometimes about shots for you and your siblings too. And I said, yeah, I know, but I would just be the worst mother in the world, right, if I didn't take her for these. And we both agreed that, yeah, I would be the worst mother on earth if I didn't do this. So I walked out the door and I took her for her 4-month shots. And I remember very vividly as I sat there watching them give her, I think it was the injected polio, just thinking to myself, I wonder what's in this vaccine. And I didn't ask, I just told myself, well, it's killed virus or bacteria and some saline, because that's all they would give a baby, right? And my own head was like, oh yeah, they would never give a baby anything toxic. So that happened, and by the next day, she was covered in a rash, head to toe, and severely jaundiced again. We went into the hospital again for bilirubin light. She developed milk allergy overnight. She had had no problem prior to that. Again, I was told not to worry, this is all normal, she's fine. But at this point, deep inside, I knew something was horribly wrong, and I felt like, I just felt that she was going to die. And I begged and I pleaded with the doctor, you know, what is wrong? This just can't be normal. They assured me it was. And then she, shortly sometime after her 4-month shots, she began to have, her eyes would just be black. She had beautiful blue eyes, but after 4 months, they're black. You never saw them again. Her pupils were dilated all the time. It just didn't matter. And then she started, she would be engaged with you. You would be, you know, she would giggle, you would be interacting, and then she would go blank. She would be staring straight ahead into space, not moving a muscle, just gone. And my family and I, we would all, you know, we'd be like, Haley, come on, where are you? What's wrong? Where'd you go? And it would last a few minutes. I didn't know at the time, I had no idea that it was actually a type of seizure, a hypotonic hyperresponsive episode. I thought for seizures that you had to have convulsions. So I had no idea what it was. I just knew it was happening and told her doctor. He never actually saw it happen. So they just kept telling me everything was normal, and I knew that something was really, really wrong. And at 5 months and 14 days of age, this particular night, July 17th, I laid her down in her crib. She had been really fussy. It took a long time to get her to calm down and go to bed and go to sleep. And I remember she rolled onto her stomach, and I told myself, oh, you have to put her on her back. I was well aware of the risk factors supposed for SIDS. And I put her back on her back, made sure she was okay, left the room, went downstairs for a while to do some tax accounting homework, getting my degree at the time, and I came back upstairs and she was dead. And I knew as soon as I entered the room by her color that she was gone. So at the time, basically, I was just in so much shock that I didn't have it in me to really look at anything, and I was simply told in the emergency room when they confirmed, or to me, that, I mean, you keep in your head that whole time, somehow they're gonna bring her back, right? Somehow they are. So you don't believe your child is gone until they come tell you for real that she's gone. So it was a few months after that I began going to SIDS support group meetings, because that's what they told me in the ER before any autopsy. I was told, SIDS, sudden infant death syndrome. And in the support group meetings I went to, every parent, every single parent there would bring up vaccines and ask. There were, every story had vaccines involved. A lot of them, the child died the next day, got vaccines, high-pitched screamed, projectile vomit, whatever, until they died with, less than 24 hours. So we were all asking our SIDS support group leader, is there a connection? This just seems like all of us feel like vaccines are involved. So we were given one study that says there's no link, and that study was funded by pharma. I didn't realize it at the time, but I found out later. But basically everybody just believed that, and I think we all wanted to believe that because no one likes to think that they allowed something to happen to their child. So it was a more comfortable thing to believe that you had nothing to do with it. It wasn't vaccines, all of that. And then when my son was born the following year, I decided that I really needed to look into it for myself and not just, I couldn't, the thought of going through this again was unbearable. So I started researching, and what I found in the medical literature and published studies, all kinds of stuff, there's no doubt in my mind vaccines cause SIDS, and there's no doubt in my mind that vaccines are what caused my daughter to die. She had blatant symptoms of mercury poisoning, and this was the 90s, at the height of when there was way more mercury than now. And when I added it up, what she got, it was 172 times the amount considered safe by the FDA. But that's, to ingest, not inject. So that set me on this path. I have, on my way out the door, I was like, I should take Haley's picture, and then I totally forgot it. But this is a portrait that my friend Joan Moutry painted for me. It's a small version. It's got some stuff on it, but the good pictures are at home.
Somebody painted that?
Yes, my friend Joan Moutry in Spokane. What's that?
She's so talented.
She is extremely talented. Very lucky, yeah.
Right, we're going to write her name on the bus.
Okay, great.
Thank you for telling your story. And
Thank you for letting me.
We are all so heartbroken. Our people here sending you so many hearts.
Thank you. Thank you.
And love, and they're cross, they're angry. They're very angry.
They should be.
On behalf of Haley. We are on number 96. So you are 90, Haley's 97.
97, anywhere.
Yeah, we've got to start finishing
Right here.
Probably a bit better if you. We'll see with here. That's a bit cleaner. It doesn't come off, so don't worry when we do. Do you have a date of death?
Yes.
You can write that.
Oh my gosh, I never did that. One of them is
It's very emotional signing the bus.
Thanks, Holly. Thanks for everything you're doing.
It's going to be okay. We have this thing that all the babies that have died are in the bus riding with us.
They are.
Yeah, we've got a little picture of one of them in there. We have to get a picture of Haley. Send me one.
I have more of these.
Oh no, I don't want to take anything.
I do. I have.
Are you sure you have more?
Absolutely.
Okay, there you go. Haley is coming with us in the bus.
I could write on the
We've
back.
got Eric Green in there?
Yeah, he's a good friend of mine, Ronnie and Eric. I used to live in Colorado for 10 years.
Are you sure? I don't want to say
I am
something
sure.
that you can't replace.
No, it's not like that. I have tons.
Well, we're honoured. How exciting to have that she's coming with us. I need Dell to say, please stand up. Vaccine injury, death.
Right, exactly.
Haley's coming with us. Thank you so much. She's just a beautiful angel. And
Thank you. Thank you.
So sorry about what happened to you. So who paid for that?
A bunch of us at Quincy raised the money.
They raised the money and put that ad in. Thank you so much.
That was a great turnout for it. Really great.
You should show Andy that. He'll be really grateful.
Dawn's one of our big warrior moms from California.
Yeah.
Big fighter.
Right, yeah. 80-2109 277.
Yep.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I just want to put this safely in the
Absolutely.
So sad.
Thank you both so much.
Thank you. So good to see you.
You too, Josh.
Autism destroys families, and more importantly, it destroys our greatest resource, which are our children.
Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
pledged to find out what is driving the country's rise in autism.
Compiling medical records from a number of databases. He'll direct resources to study environmental factors, exposures, and external factors.
Scientific progress on this has been slow because scientists are frankly scared to ask the question.
Genes don't cause epidemics. You need an environmental toxin, and we're going to look at all the potential culprits.
With no a priori thumb on the scale, you can't look at that.
Yeah. I'm very grateful to the Secretary for finally saying from an important public platform that this is an epidemic and we need to find the causes and we need to stop it.
Other issues CHC has been pushing for years are finally gaining mainstream traction.
Today we're announcing we are removing industry members, pharma members from FDA advisory committees.
We're seeing reports that you're considering removing the COVID vaccine as a mandatory shot for children.
The recommendation for children was always dubious. The vaccine itself does have profound risk of myocarditis, pericarditis, even strokes.
Very, 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 very few people are still taking these things. In that sense, the mRNA vaccines for COVID in the marketplace are effectively dead.
We are working together to change the federal fluoride recommendations, and we're looking at the science now. There's a direct inverse correlation between fluoride exposure and low IQ in children.
Health officials announced plans to phase out 8 artificial dyes from our food supply.
The FDA is effectively removing all petroleum-based food dyes from the U.S. food supply.
We don't have a surveillance system that actually works, and that is a crime. And we will do that right away. And I understand the perverse incentives that need to be changed right away.
When there's a political will to answer a question like this, it will happen.
We're going to change things for real this time.